We want to build bunks in the back of the bus, which means that the wheelchair lift has to come out. Can I get it out of the bus without breaking the lift or crushing myself? Welcome to the Hippie Geeks and our schoolie conversion Soul the Sun Chaser. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to catch all our new content. Our plan with the bus has always been to put 2 sets of bunks in the rear for the kids. Once we can afford to do a full conversion, that will involve custom shapes and cutting foam, but for this summer they will just be built to hold their existing twin-size mattresses. Now, the problem with that is our bus came with a fully functional wheelchair lift. A lot of people will just dump it out the door or take it to the scrapyard and let them pull it out just to be rid of it. However, if you have watched any of our videos, you know that we cannot stand seeing something go to waste. It is in great condition, has a load capacity of 800 pounds, and I think that we will be able to find someone that can use it. Now, the lift weighs around 450 pounds. I am not able to get enough folks together to just pull it out and set it down with muscle power, but I am pretty good at throwing things together. So I grabbed a pencil and paper for some quick sketches, did some calculations, and figured out that I could do it pretty easily by myself. That's actually kind of funny looking back and saying it out loud, but experience is something that we acquire after we actually need it. Let's go over what I got right, what I got wrong, and what I would do differently. First thing to do was run to Lowe's. As my end goal is to build bunks, I only wanted to buy 2x4s for the framing so that I could reuse all of the materials after the lift was out. We come here a fair amount when our projects are going, so I made a beeline for the lumber area. The first rule of Schoolie Club is, you do not talk about Schoolie Club. The second rule of Schoolie Club is, you do not talk about Schoolie Club. Third rule of Schoolie Club, always dig through the wood pile and find the straightest lumber. You pay the same price for a straight piece of wood that you would for a twisted piece, so take your time and dig through the pile. No one will ever say anything to you, and it is well worth the extra time to get the perfect wood for the project. Take a look at this 2x4. Hold it up and look down the length of the board. It bends out of a straight line pretty severely in one direction. It's not the worst that I have seen, but it is bad enough that I am unwilling to buy it, so back on the pile it goes. Now, look at this board. It isn't perfect, but it is also a construction grade framing 2x4 that costs $3. This is going to be good enough for a set of bunks for this summer, so I dug out the 8 of the 8-foot long boards I was going to need. Next up was the hand-operated 1,500 pound winch. They only had one left, so I grabbed it with the quickness and ran out of the store laughing at my good luck. Well, not really. I actually walked up to the checkout calmly and paid for my purchase. I'm not a monster. Grand total walking out of the store was $60.82, not bad at all. With that said, I already have a 4-foot long section of 4x4 that I will be using for the crossbeam, and a box of 3-inch screws that I will be assembling the whole thing with. I loaded everything into the van, unsure if I was about to make a mistake or perform a miracle. One way or another, the lift was coming out, hopefully in a single, functional piece. The first thing to do when removing the lift is to open your battery compartment and disconnect your batteries. You don't want to short anything out accidentally as you remove the lift, so just get it out of the way at the beginning. Once you have that covered, it's time to climb under the bus and start the tedious part of the project. At least on my lift, they use what are called carriage bolts. They have a rounded head, but underneath that is a square shank that fits into a hole in the lift itself. The only way to get those out is to come from the other side and remove the nut. You will not be able to use a socket on these unless you have some kind of crazy super deep socket. My deep sockets were not nearly deep enough, so I needed to use an end wrench. Now, this could be a really tedious job to do if you are just using a normal end wrench. However, a few years ago, I bought a new set of tools and all of them have a ratcheting end. I cannot tell you how amazing that is. You really just need to experience it for yourself. Now, occasionally, the square shank of the carriage bolt will have rusted out, and it will just sit there and spin as you turn the nut. In that case, just grab a pair of vice grips and clip them onto the end in such a way that the vice grips will bump into one of the cross members and hold the bolt in place so that you can finish removing the nut. My bus had 10 different bolts, 2 in each support. They used 2 of the main floor cross members, and the other 3 sets were run through their own supports. When you are removing the last nut off of each support, be very careful to hold on to it. They are not connected to the bottom of the bus in any way, and they can very possibly fall and ruin your day. There are few things that I want to experience less than a greasy chunk of metal slamming into my teeth. In my case, they were held on by dirt and grime, so they didn't come down until I pulled on them later. Time to build the gantry that I'm going to use to remove the lift and lower it out carefully. Well, I hope anyways. I had already figured out how I was going to build it and knew which pieces I needed, so I got right down to cutting. There were 6 4-foot lengths of 2x4 and 2 1-foot lengths of 2x4. That is all I had to cut, as I already had a 4-foot section of 4x4 from a previous project, and then 4 complete 8-foot 2x4s. Once I had all of those, I moved the saw out of the way and started putting it together. First, I laid down the 4x4, then grabbed the main supports so that I could connect them together. I wanted the 4x4 to be resting on top of the 2x4s for strength, so I needed to get them to hold together, and that is where the 1-foot long sections come in. I used 3 screws through each end that I was attaching, which should be more than enough to hold it. Now, I am not worrying about this structure being perfectly square, as it will only be used once. I am just kind of eyeballing the assembly, and as long as it is pretty close, it will be good enough. Here, we run into my first mistake, although it won't be apparent for a little while what it is that went wrong. I'm using 8-foot 2x4s for the vertical structure, and I really should have used 10-footers. While the top of the gantry wound up just barely tall enough to clear the door, it isn't really high enough to be able to pull the lift out easily. Another couple of feet would have made all the difference in the world, and if I ever have to do something like this again, I will definitely use 10-foot long ones instead. Next up was attaching 2 of the 4-foot sections to the bottom for our stabilizing feet. Again, I just got them as square as possible by looking at the angle and connected with 3 screws on each side. I only put the feet coming off in one direction, as this will be pushed up against the bus and it will get a lot of its stability from that. From here, it is time to attach the angled supports. I just put 1 screw on the feet, and that allows me to shift things around a little bit before I decide on exactly where I want it to go and secure it in place. These 4 2x4s are going to be bearing all of the weight of your lift, so be sure to get them attached securely. Now it is time to attach the supports for the hand-cranked winch. They should fit pretty easily across the width of the gantry, and I placed the horizontal supports 4 feet apart. We want to be able to run another one of the 4-foot 2x4s between them, and that is where we will attach the winch. After those are all attached, it was time to put in the final support between the vertical legs. This is the second mistake that I made, though it all worked out in the end. You will notice that all of my supports only go side to side and up and down. What I really should have done was made some cross bracing in an X pattern. It would have went a long way in removing the side to side movement that I experienced later. Next up is installing the winch. However, you only get to see me unboxing it as my camera ran out of space and I didn't notice. What I can say about the install is to simply follow the instructions and you should be fine. You want to be sure that you use properly sized bolts to attach it, as you do not want it ripping out of your support and slamming into your face. Now it is time to slide the gantry over to the bus. Try to do it without tripping like I did. I almost fell flat on my face. While it would have been funny, I feel no need to shatter my front teeth. Again. At this point, my neighbor came over to see what I was doing and decided to stick around to help. If the gantry had been a little taller, it wouldn't have been necessary, but it worked out really well that he did show up. If you haven't disconnected the wiring from your lift, make sure to do it now. Once this process gets started, you don't want to have to deal with the wiring as it hangs half out of the bus. Unfortunately, the design of this lift made it so that I could not remove the 6 middle bolts without the lift being deployed, and I wish I had noticed that before I had the entire thing disconnected. At this point, we had to raise the beast up one side at a time to prop it on some scrap wood just to try to get the bolts out of the floor. Again, a taller gantry would have had an easier time with this, but we made it work. Once we had it up on blocks, I made my third and final mistake. I should have grabbed my angle grinder here and cut off the bolts so that I wouldn't have to deal with them. Instead, we just tried shifting it out of the door with the bolts bending and getting stuck underneath. Again, not my most shining moment. However, by being careful and going slow, we were able to carefully turn it sideways and get it out the door until it was finally there, hanging in space, ready to be lowered to the ground. In one piece, no less. The winch made it really easy to lower it carefully and get it on the ground without hurting the lift or either of us in the process. That is how I managed to get our lift out of the bus in one piece. I am curious how many of you removed your lifts as well, and how did you get them out? Let us know in the comments below. I would love to see how other folks have done it. If this is your first time here visiting Soul the Sun Chaser, it would be wonderful to have you subscribe. This channel is all about our schooly journey, the good, the bad, and everything in between. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and check out our Patreon page or merch store to support the channel directly. Until next time, keep seeking adventure, chasing the sun.